Hello, my fellow MCs. Primo here. With version 1.3 only a couple weeks away, the opportunity to finally run a mono imaginary and mono quantum team is arising with the releases of Danhong IL, Fushan, and Lynx. Today, we are doing a full breakdown and analysis on all things related to mono element teams and its potential impact on the future of Honkai Star Rail. So let's sit back, grind some Stellar Jade, and let's talk about it.
Times have changed beyond recognition.
Before we dive into the specifics of a mono imaginary and mono quantum team, we first have to understand why these two elements can be argued to be the best in the game. The value of these elements lies in the break effect abilities as well as the related relic sets associated with these elements. For the imaginary element, if you cause a weakness break on the enemy, your characters will have a 150% base chance to apply the imprisoned status on them. To break it down further, the imprisonment status will cause an enemy's actions to be delayed by 30% times 1 plus break effect, and their speed to be reduced by 10% for 1 turn. Now the question you may be asking is why is this better overall than some other elements like electric, which causes shock, or wind, which causes wind shear? And it's the simple fact that it all comes down to turn manipulation, leading to a direct DPS boost. By imprisoning your enemies and getting the benefits I just mentioned, you are giving most of your characters, depending on their speed, the opportunity to get one more round of attacks in. Thus, you can get off major damage through their general attacks, continue to generate energy, and accumulate skill points. For the quantum element, weakness breaks on the enemy have a 150% base chance to cause entanglement for 1 turn. Now, the uniqueness of entanglement comes from its dual effects of quantum damage stacks as well as a delay in the enemy's actions. For the additional quantum damage application, every time the entangled enemy is hit, they will accumulate 1 stack for the following damage formula: 0.6 times stack count times base break damage times enemy toughness multiplier. Once it becomes the entangled enemy's turn, they will take additional damage based on the stacks they've accumulated. The entangled enemy will also have their action delayed by 20% times 1 plus break effect, which will help in having your characters move ahead of the targeted enemy and attacking for more stacks. The Wastelander of Banditry Desert Relic set is one of the best damage dealing sets in the game, as it gives you a 10% crit rate increase against debuffed enemies and 20% crit damage when attacking imprisoned enemies. For mono imaginary DPS characters like Welt and Danhong IL, this is just free damage to apply to your units to help them reach their maximum potential. And since you can guarantee that enemies will have debuffs once they are imprisoned, you can guarantee a crit value increase of 40%. You can make the argument that the Genius of Brilliant Stars set is the best relic set in the game based on utility. This is assuming you have Silverwolf, who we will touch on later in this video. You will consistently be getting a 20% defense reduction on enemies due to them always having a quantum weakness. Even if you don't have Silverwolf, you are still able to get a 10% defense reduction when attacking the enemy, which is still very solid considering you don't need to meet any specific requirements. Of course, all elements will have its advantages when you break it down in detail, but for the quantum and imaginary element, you can't deny the overall effectiveness they possess in game.
Times have changed beyond recognition.
The pros of a mono element team lie in the break effect synergy between different functioning units and overall aesthetic of a singular element on your team. The synergy between units on your team lies in the fact that they will all contribute to the break effect of the enemies, especially considering how high value the break effects are for imprisonment and entanglement. Being able to go all out and breaking that toughness bar will be very beneficial in increasing your overall DPS. Now, some people may not care about this, but seeing the all purple or all gold ultimate symbols on your screen can be very pleasing to the eye. I know for myself personally, the all gold imaginary symbols look too good to pass up on to utilize them in combat. I can already see viewers rolling their eyes at me, saying I'm coping and to give a real reason why a mono team is more beneficial than a multi-element team. But hey, this game was built on animations and aesthetics, and being able to utilize a mono element team in Memory of Chaos and be successful would be very satisfying. The cons of running a mono element team are that it leaves yourself susceptible to not being able to weakness break non-boss and elite enemies. This is assuming you are matching your mono team with a boss that can be weakness broke by it, and you are also greatly decreasing your character diversity. When running a mono element team, users have to be aware that there will be waves of enemies you will have to deal with that don't possess a weakness to the element you are running. This may potentially cause issues for you, but if your team is built well enough and has good synergy, you may be able to push through with raw damage to take the enemies out. With it being so early in our Honkai Star Rail journey, the amount of characters that we have available is just not enough to efficiently switch out units when running a mono team. Now, the units that we do have available to us for a mono imaginary and mono quantum team are more than enough to clear Memory of Chaos. For a mono imaginary team, the lineup would be Locha, Yukong, Welt, and Danhong IL. This will give you an SS tier healer, a very good support, a sub DPS in Welt, and a main DPS in Danhong IL. For mono quantum teams, you can run a lineup of Fushan, Lynx, Silverwolf and Seal or QQ. Fushan would act as your tank, while Lynx would provide healing for your team. We all know Silverwolf's utility on this team, and Seal would be your main DPS. Or if you don't have Seal, you can totally slot in QQ, and she would be just fine. In the future, if we are able to get more units that we can mix and match based on need, that would be amazing. But for the time being, both these teams are very viable options for your account.
Times have changed beyond recognition.
I believe that the units that will gain the most from running mono element teams are those that are support units that can directly buff elemental damage, and those with utility buffs that can help trigger other units' talents or relics. When looking at some support units that can enhance elemental damage for the team, Yukong comes to mind here. Yukong's Ascension 4 Trace enhances imaginary damage by 12%. Another unit I wanted to point out with a similar damage buff is Asta, who with her Ascension 4 Trace will increase fire damage by 18%. In line with the synergy idea, Silverwolf's skill will guarantee application of a quantum weakness to the targeted enemy, as long as she is run on a mono quantum team. This helps all quantum units ensure they can break down the toughness bar of whatever enemy they verse, even if they don't initially start off with the quantum weakness. Wealth, skill, and ultimate will work very well on mono imaginary teams, as it will help debuff the enemy and have a 100% base chance of imprisoning them for one turn, regardless of if you break their weakness or not. This will directly help with the requirements of the Banditry of Wandering Desert Relic set and get you that crit rate and crit damage increase. Not only do I think those characters can get a major bump up in the meta, I also believe some light cones can greatly benefit from being utilized in a mono element team. The light cone that immediately pops into my head is Planetary Rendezvous. Even at S1, this will help increase the elemental damage of the holder to all allies by 12%, and at S5, it'll increase by 24%. Now, if that is confusing, let me just break it down further for you guys. Say, for example, Ting Yun holds Planetary Rendezvous. Now, any other ally on your party that deals electric damage will get that 12% electric damage increase because Ting Yun is the holder of this light cone. Now, because this is a gacha light cone, there isn't a guarantee that you may ever get this on your account. But if you are lucky enough to obtain this, throw this on a unit like Yukong and watch the damage potential of your team skyrocket. Another light cone that I can see working on a mono imaginary team is Resolution Shines as Pearls of Sweat. With a 60% chance at S1 to ensnare an enemy to reduce an enemy's defenses by 12%, you are looking at a debuff directly attributed from a light cone, which can help with triggering the crit rate increase from the Banditry Relic set. In the future, when we inevitably get a Quantum Harmony character, Dance 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 could be a great option to utilize to work directly in correlation with the entanglement of enemies. Once you're able to get a weakness break on a targeted enemy, if the holder of this light cone can use their ultimate, you can help advance all allies' actions by 16% at S1 and up to 24% at S5, and thus be able to get more stacks for the additional quantum damage proc. Now, Dance 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 on its own is a great light cone, but I can see it being even more valuable for mono quantum teams in the right situation.
Times have changed beyond recognition.
I think the discussion between mono element versus multi-element teams will depend on the enemies you are having to face and the units you have available on your account. If you are hyper invested into a mono element team, then it'll be more than likely that you'll run that team on one side of the Memory of Chaos that sports that specific weakness. This will free up the other elements on your account to attack the other side. I think another big determining factor in this is what preservation and abundance units you have built. Since the latter stages of Memory of Chaos may require a healer and a tank unit to be able to help your team survive, you may be forced to utilize a unit from your mono element team to help the other team survive based on lineup inefficiencies. The most likely targets that I'm referring to here is a healing unit like Locha or a shield unit like Fushan. Of course, having dual or triple weakness break potential for all enemies that you are facing is ideal. I won't sugarcoat it. But there can be an argument made that the weakness break potential that one unit possesses doesn't outweigh the overall utility that a unit like Yukong could bring to a mono imaginary team. When going with a multi-element team, you are able to pair highly compatible units of different elements on the same team. While mono element teams focus on break effect potential, multi-element teams can focus on trace and kit synergy to maximize damage. I think as of this current moment, a multi-element team is still a better option, solely because of the character diversity you can have. But as more units get introduced in the future, I can see mono-element teams making a huge impact on how content is cleared. Now, this isn't to say that mono-element teams aren't viable in a Honkai Star Rail as of this current moment. They very much are, and with units that we have at our disposal, they can definitely do some major damage in Memory of Chaos. But I do see mono-element teams catching up and even surpassing multi-element teams in the near future.
Times have changed beyond recognition.
And with that, this will end our video on our full breakdown on mono element teams and if they are the new meta in Honkai Star Rail. If you like the content, please like and subscribe. Comment down below how you feel about mono element teams. Do you see that being something you want to use for your account in the future, or are you going to go ahead and stick with your multi-element teams? I think you can make an argument for both, and I'm curious to see what you guys think. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.